So, welcome everyone to this episode of Women Celebrating Women with me, Franny Kirby. And on my second series today, I have the beautiful, the amazing Carolene Joy Cabrera King. Such a beautiful name, such a beautiful soul. So, Carolene, would you like to give yourself a short introduction just so that everyone knows a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And just for anybody listening, like the way Franny has helped me and my family out so much. Like she worked with my husband for a period of time, and so I got to kind of see her on Sundays, like from behind the
Yeah.
door and things like that. So I'm really excited to be engaging in this conversation. I'm Caroline. I work primarily in the education sector, and I do liberation work with educators, social justice work. And then I do breath work. So I facilitate breath work for all sorts of people. I facilitate every Saturday, and I do one-on-ones with folks as well. And I'm really excited about this particular conversation about women because in the last couple of years, I've been working on a book, and it is grounded in my first pregnancy and birth experience with my daughter. So when I think about being a woman, I think a lot about the power of the woman's body and the power of feminine energy and how much we are capable of. So I'm really excited to just be in a space where we're women celebrating women.
I love this. Oh my gosh, there's so many little nuggets that I want to try and remember all of these. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to hear you talk about like liberation and social justice, because I think in these spaces sometimes people kind of avoid those conversations. So love to come to that at some point. But like your book, that sounds incredible. That's just that's such a beautiful way to sort of think about how you've or to take that experience of going through pregnancy and having your first child and thinking about how you're going to ground that and let others know what that meant to you and what it can mean for them, because it's such a, I mean, I've got children myself. It's such a huge transformational process, I think,
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of us. Not everyone has children, but when you do, it just shifts and changes when you've grown a whole human in your body. Like it's just incredible, isn't it?
It's so magical. And actually, like a lot of my book is connected to the social justice piece because while it is about my first pregnancy and birth, I'm like talking about what I believe it's going to take to get to a more liberated world. So I use my birth experience and my pregnancy as a metaphor, but I have two really big major points in that when we want to get to a better world that works better for more people, we have to know that world is coming. We have to know that world is already here. We have to see it with such clarity, and we
Yeah.
have to have such deep knowing, the same way a mother knows that her child is here even though she can't see his or her face. She could feel the child growing, like she watches her body growing, and we need to know that about the new world the same way a mother knows that about the child in her womb. And then we have to be able to tolerate the discomfort between this world and that one, the same way a mother tolerates the discomfort of her growing body and the pain of every contraction between here and there. So I think that's true about birth, and I think it's true about our world as a whole too. And when you talk a little bit about people avoiding the conversations about social justice and liberation, to me that's like we're avoiding the contractions that will eventually get us to a world that works better for all people, and we're continuing to prolong the labor, and we're continuing to like force the child back into the belly when the child's trying to come out, and we need to be able to be willing to be uncomfortable in order to make any real change in this world.
And I think that's so important and such an amazing way to frame that, because I think um so I mean I've kind of been in this sort of law of attraction world for some time now, and I love being in that space, and I love that kind of thinking about how we are powerful creators and how we can create and how we get to choose our reality. But I don't think anyone's quite expressed it in that way before, that kind of really takes that social justice piece, which I've often seen as sometimes you can get a bit down in the mired in it, if you know what I mean. Like sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
can, those of us who are kind of in that space as well, which I am definitely in my day job, is like kind of like you can get a bit kind of stuck in the mud about how did we actually really kind of move forward and actually, like you say, have those difficult conversations, have that discomfort, but we be willing to be challenged, be willing to challenge, and be willing to then hold that. And that's what it sounds like you're talking about. You're able to hold the perspective, like that kind of like the greater perspective of like that new world that we're all wanting to move towards. And that feels like the key that sometimes in those social justice conversations that people might lose. So people might lose that kind of like, actually, I'm going to hold the perspective that we're going to move towards this. And I love that you're able to do that, because I love all your posts when you talk about stuff like this, because I just think it's so powerful to have someone, and I hope it's okay to say this, but someone with lived experience of like actually having to navigate all sorts of different types of issues, like being a woman, being a person of like, I don't know if you call yourself a person of color or a person of like Asian descent or whatever you, however you kind of define, that you have to navigate all of these things as well as just being out there in the world. So yeah, I just wonder if how do you bring your perspective, do you think? How do you hold that wider, more beautiful picture of how we want things to be whilst also like challenging? What do you say around that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Two things come up for me when I listen to you respond right now. The first thing I want to say too is I think, well, actually, I'll start with this. So, and I'm Filipina. My parents come from the Philippines. I identify as Pinay, and I identify as a person of color, person of Asian descent, all of these kind of identity markers. And there is an indigenous Filipino value. It's called kapwa. There's no direct English translation for it, but it is the belief that in order to be human, we have to be able to see ourselves in one another. And I think, and I live my life according to this. I live everything from my day to day according to, like, in order for me to really touch my full humanity, I have to really remember the full humanity of every single person I interact with, no matter how far away their belief systems are from my own. And that means that when other people are experiencing pain or devastation or being killed, that pain is mine on some level, because it is a shared humanity that we've got going on here. And also on another level of that is that their joy is also my joy. So this power that I see in the world, this magic that I see in the world, the beauty I see in the world in other people, that is also mine. Like, we share that. We have a shared fundamental humanity. And I think something that is a physical reminder of this for me as a breathwork facilitator and a learner and a student of the breath, like, we literally share the breath. We share this air, and without it, we would all cease to exist. We have this shared world, shared breath that is pumping us all and keeping us all alive, and that is one breath that is circulating all everywhere, into my lungs, out of my lungs, into the, like, it is everywhere. It is a thread that connects all of us 100% of the time. And so when I think about social justice work, and from my particular identity, I do a lot of thinking about and a lot of dismantling work of how Asian folks, dismantling of anti-Blackness within the Asian community, because when we talk about racism, it's not like binary. It's not like white people are racist or people are like, if that was the case, we would never get people like Candace Owens. We would never get, like, if it was that easy, we would know, but we know that's not true. We also get people who are white who are really strong allies and really strong co-conspirators. And if the binary was so easy that it was like people of color versus white people, this conversation would be a lot less nuanced. And I think one aspect of my identity that really helps me understand that is I'm married to a white man. I'm married to a white man who does his work, who thinks about his own identity, who thinks about the ways that he shows up in the world. And that I also am a big fan of and learn a lot from the work of James Baldwin. And in some of that work, he talks about a bit about how white supremacy is killing all people. Like, it murders Black folks in particular, and it can turn white folks into monsters who fail to see their shared humanity with the people around them. And so when I think about social justice, when I think about birth, when I think about a world that works better for all people, it's a world where all of us remember and recognize our humanity, a world where all of us remember and recognize the humanity of one another. And that's a beautiful world to envision and hold the space for. And I too, Franny, and I met you, and I met inside the law of attraction world. And I feel the power of my ability to create. I feel the power of my ability to envision and to bring that vision into reality, into physical form. And so when I think about social justice and seeing a more liberated world, I'm like, what would happen if we all felt our collective power? What would happen if we all could see a world that worked better for all of us, and we didn't get defensive about it, we didn't give up about it, we didn't succumb to the hopelessness? If we could all see that world clearly for ourselves and for one another. And it might be hard because sometimes I might see something that is clashing with the other people around me, and our world moves so fast that it's going to take us slowing down enough to really see each other and one another's needs in order to figure out how to move forward into something bigger and better for all of us.
I love all this. I'm trying to kind of like, again, there's so much you're saying that I'm like, oh, this. I mean, I've done breath work with you. Just wanted to go back because that's what you started with, which was the breath work and how powerful that is, and how the sessions that I've had with you and how powerful it is when we connect with the breath. And that, like you said, that way that we can say that we're all taking breath, we're all breathing the same air, we're all taking in that breath. And the breath, like for me, is a really important part of my daily practice. So whether it's not necessarily breath work itself, but that just coming back to our breath, it's such a simple one, isn't it? Like when we're talking about the other situations that you're talking about, like when you move into those kind of spaces which are challenging, where you're kind of seeing things where you're seeing people whose belief systems are very different to yours, that are potentially causing lots of pain for other people, like still being able to hold that space if they still have a shared humanity here. And that breath, I feel like the breath really helps. And I don't know if that kind of rings true for you, but
100%.
being able to take a breath for a minute, because for any of us, and I've definitely owned this myself, is that sometimes it's easier to react rather than respond. So an immediate kind of reaction that might not be from the place that I'd want to come from. And sometimes that might be appropriate in, kind of very extreme situations. But for the most part, being able to come back to our breath and going, okay, I'm going to connect with my heart. I'm going to connect with who I really am, my true nature, which is beyond humanity, isn't it? It's that kind of source love. From this place, what do I want to say? And it might still be something very direct, it might be really direct action as well. It might not be even like a spoken, but yeah, I just feel like there's so much we can learn from the breath in terms of that kind of a call to action, or a call to if as a white person, to be an ally to people of color, or people who are being oppressed in any way, really. Like, what can we, I have to own that kind of white privilege, which is also really like uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable to kind of have to recognize that I get advantages that I don't know that I'm getting, that people will often view me in a way because of the color of my skin that they might not do to someone who is a person of color, or like from a minority group. So I love how I love your kind of rampage, because this is the bit that I really want to get to. So I love your kind of rampage of like, wouldn't it be amazing if we just all kind of collectively use that power to create that world that we want to create, that's liberated, that is freedom for everyone, which is like a genuine equity for all of us, that we're able to really meet everyone with that shared humanity. And actually that kind of, because I don't believe, maybe there is a world where there's no conflict whatsoever, but I feel like there's always going to be some conflict, but being able to navigate conflict in a way that is respectful and it doesn't, I just think there's ways to kind of like bring all this together and move beyond the sort of the classic social justice movement, and bring in what you're talking about, which is this kind of wider, let's use our collective power in a really kind of we can do this. We can create that reality. We have the power to do this.
We totally do. We totally, and to circle back to like pregnancy and birth, I think about how there was so little I did in growing my baby. Like my body was able to make eyes, a set of eyes, a brain, to build a heart, to build feet. And so when I get into places of feeling like that new, more liberated world is impossible, like I don't know if that could happen, I remember my freaking body made another body.
Yeah,
Like if my body can
absolutely.
make another body, then our world can make another world. Like
Absolutely.
and to talk about like the conflicts, because I too agree I don't think that we're ever going to get to a world where we have zero conflict. If we're in that place, we're inside of like some utopia where we're not learning anything anymore, or not
We're not
growing and
growing.
expanding.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think about my marriage. So, and I brought it up already, but when I think about me and Skylar, so people get really surprised because we don't fight. We just don't fight. It doesn't happen inside our marriage. Does that mean our marriage is absent of conflict? Absolutely not. Like we come up against conflict sometimes, but we recognize that it is me and Skylar against this conflict, not me against Skylar. And so when we navigate toward something something simple like miscommunication and a scheduling or whatever, it's not about you scheduled you blah blah blah. It's about, all right, we messed this up somehow. How do we solve it together? How do we figure this out together? And when I think about that inside our dynamic, I think about we get into this place of opposition oftentimes when we're talking about social change. And if instead of being in that place of opposition, we could be like, all right, it's a little messed up what's going on right now. How do we solve it together?
How do we come together?
Yes.
And how do we not, like you said, not see each other as the opposition, not kind of get polarized in our position,
yes,
so that we then see I'm right, you're wrong, or that, which is just keeps us stuck. Like, and I don't mean you and me, I mean like the kind of the world and the
totally.
you get stuck in these positions. And whereas when we can, like, that's such a beautiful analogy that you came up there with there, and I have a lot of admiration for that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to do more of that in my relationship, because I'm not sure I always do that. But like, to say there's a conflict, so it's not about me versus Skylar, as you say, but it's about you and Skylar going, okay, so somehow something didn't quite work this time. How are we gonna navigate it? How are we maybe gonna do things differently next time? That means we don't do this. But you're not, there's not that blaming, which I think is another key one, isn't it? Of like, how to have like clear conflict resolution that means that no one feels that they're somehow being blamed, or they're wrong. So they're wrong, rather than, the situation just somehow has arisen.
Because when we get into that place of blame or I'm wrong, now we've introduced shame into the equation. And shame can be so, it can be such a halter of anything that is forward momentum. And then we're like really inside ourselves, and we're really not connecting with other people because we feel that level of shame. And I think that's part of why the work of social justice is so challenging for people, because a lot of us, and myself included, have to encounter our own shame. So when you talked a little bit about privilege, like something that I've been working on a lot lately is really recognizing my able-bodied privilege in this world. And I finished reading Disability Visibility, edited by Alice Wong, and my whole mind got rewired to go, wow, this world is built for my able body. Like the fact that I'm not in a wheelchair, the fact that I don't need a cane, the fact that I like can see with both eyes, the fact that I can hear, this world is built for me. And so when I go back to that indigenous value, Filipino value of kapwa, and go, man, there are people who are living in this world and this world is not built for them. And I have to recognize my own privilege. And when I walk down sidewalks where like wheelchairs can't access, like there's a piece of me that has a little bit of responsibility to call the city and go, this sidewalk is messed up, because I'm the one who because I have a little bit more privilege to be able to call that out.
Yeah.
So when I think about privilege, it's not a bad thing to have. It's what am I using it for? What am I using it for? So if we think about privilege as currency, and we think about all of the different types of privilege we have, like I have this privilege of my able body, and that comes with a lot. Like all of the different senses, I have access to all of these different senses. I think about my privilege. There are all of these different ways that we all have privilege of some sort. Even just having a roof over my head is a level of privilege not everybody has in the world, right? So when I think about privilege as currency, I go, how am I spending it? Am I spending this currency in a way that is selfish, or am I spending this currency in a way that remembers our shared humanity?
I think that's amazing, because I think when you say that, that's such a brilliant perspective to have, because I feel what happens is we kind of do one of two things. We either like don't own that there's any privilege, so we just kind of just ignore that there's privilege. Or we kind of go, there's some privilege, but then that shame piece comes in. So because of the shame, we actually don't act on the privilege. So then to say that actually we can move from that and just go, okay, let's acknowledge it, let's own it, and then let's use that. It's again that kind of power to create change, isn't it? And recognizing that power that we have to create change, and that we may have, because of that privilege, we may have more power. And so using that to help others. Yeah, absolutely. I love that perspective. That's such a beautiful way to view it. I love that.
Yeah. And I think a lot about it, like, yes, making our world better for others, but also like in that world, I see that world functioning better for all of us, like for
Absolutely.
100% of us. So if we can really visualize that and tap into that and start to push and stretch I think all the time about how worry is just a way to use our imagination in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. Oh my
And it's
gosh, that's
like,
so true. That is so true.
we
Again,
have
let's
such
how do we
powerful.
shift it to let's not
Yes.
worry. Let's use, we've got this amazing imagination, and I've definitely had this in my life. I have an amazing imagination. Let's use it for like what we want to create, not what we don't
Yes.
want to create. Yeah.
And to like interrupt those spaces, going back to what you were saying about the breath and just taking a deep breath in between things and just pausing and going, am I reacting from this place, or am I responding from my center? Like, what do I actually want to do here? I like that pause is so important. That pause, and a lot of times and I am guilty of this too. Like, we walk around just reacting. Like,
Cool.
something happens, we react. Something happens, we react. But if we slow down enough, I was actually talking to somebody. I facilitate a social justice book club on Sundays, and so one of the women in the book club was talking yesterday about how when she was working in corporate, like in maybe a decade or 2 decades ago, there are certain decisions that would take like 3 months time, 6 months time to make a decision. And she was talking to somebody younger who was working in a similar role about how like they were frustrated that the decision wasn't going to be made in like 2 days or something. And like our world is sped up so fast, like it's sped up. And I mean, we could bring in all this conversation about ChatGPT and AI and all of this stuff like that, but recognizing that the world moving at that speed doesn't change our ability to slow down. Like, we still can slow down. We still can take the breath. We still can center ourselves and be like, okay, I can use these tools to like carry me in the current of how fast everything is going, or I can be somebody who slows it down, pauses, and figures out, am I using these tools in the direction and moving in the direction I want to move in inside this world?
Totally
Because again, it comes back to the like, it's not good or bad. It's like, are we going in the right direction? Are we moving in the right direction?
And that the kind of, when you talk about that as well, that the paradox of actually when we slow down, and we're in the moment, when we truly are able to just really slow down and just go, okay, I'm going to really bring my energy into this moment, this present moment, and the next, and the next. There's actually plenty of time. There's no, like, it's not, you know, because I think a lot of people are like, I haven't got time, I haven't got time, I haven't got time. Like I have to check myself on this sometimes, like in terms of like, I will sometimes get into a mindset of I haven't got time, and I'm like, as soon as I switch it, as soon as I go, there's plenty of time for everything. I've got plenty of time. I just slow down. Everything just kind of like, it just flows so much easier. And actually some things just fall away, because actually, no, I don't need to do that. That doesn't need to get done. That gets picked up. This is where I am. And it's just, it's such a, like a, I think sometimes we're, or sometimes we can be looking for some really complicated things to do, but actually, like you said, it can be quite simple things sometimes that actually make a big difference. So the amount of times that I will tune into my guides and go, what's your message for me today? I think it's virtually every time they tell me to breathe. It's like very rare that they don't say, take a breath, take another, and then like, and it's just, oh, it's so powerful, isn't it? It's such a just way to bring us back to our center, way to bring us back to, and I'm very much into this, and this is probably kind of more like Joe Dispenza sort of stuff, but that kind of brain heart coherence. So let's bring them into a state of coherence, so the energy is coherent, and it's not a kind of separation of like either I'm an intellectual or I'm a feelings person. It's like, no, it's all together. I have this coherence between all of that. Yeah.
The breath is so powerful. I love everything about the breath. I love like talking about it. That's probably going to be what I'm going to write my next book on once I finish this book. Like there's just so much to learn from the breath. And like, again, what you were saying about the simplicity of it. Like sometimes we don't need all of the big fireworks and all of the flowery things attached to it. Sometimes there's a lot of power in just slowing down and taking a deep breath. And actually one of my breathwork teachers did a little bit of coaching with me a little while ago when I was in a space of, I just don't have enough time. I don't have enough time for everything. And I had like intellectually gone through this space of course I have time. Like I know there's just the present moment. Like there's only the present moment. And like the anxiety about the future and the worries about the past are actually like all here in the present moment. I only have the present moment. But I was so tripped up in like, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. So I met with Jason, Revelation Breathwork. And he was like, okay, Carol, when you run out of time, what do you have more of? And I was like, I got more of the time. Like there's not actually ever, like we don't actually ever run out of, like if we run out of it, we wouldn't be having a conversation about it because we'd be dead. Like we actually have nothing but time.
I love that. I love that. As you were talking then as well, I feel like what he was also doing, and you said like it was intellectual, that what was going on, and I think I definitely have this with me as well, until it becomes a bodily felt experience, until it kind of really sinks into our body, we're not often able to really kind of shift or transform what's going on. And I think that's the other thing that the breath is great at doing, because the breath is like connecting us to our body, connecting us to the ground, connecting, and that's such a, I love that question that he asked you. I swear that
it's so good, right?
Came straight from source, that question. He was definitely channeling his whatever on that one, because it's like, what do you, once you run out of time, what's going to happen? What else was going to like
more time?
I love it. Oh, so in terms of your book then, so you're kind of weaving your kind of social justice and the analogy between that and the birth of your daughter. Do you like to say like a little bit more about that and how that's coming along?
Yeah, it's been a process. And so I write a lot. I like to write in short form. I write plays. I do a lot of writing, but I've never written a book before. And it's definitely been quite a process, like moving from page to page and like working with an editor and like getting people to read it and thinking through it. And I it's it feels very much like almost a new birth process. Like I keep setting these dates for myself, like I'm going to finish this by this time, but just like a due date is not a birth date. Like it just feels like it is moving in the timing that it needs to be moving in, and I'm just trusting it. But yeah, I've been working on my book. It's called Unassimilating, and I think a lot about assimilation. And I think about the tensions oftentimes between building true authentic community and like asking people to give up parts of themselves in order to belong, which I call assimilation. And so I think a lot about this one quote by Audre Lorde. She says, without community, there is no liberation, but liberation must not mean a shedding of our differences, nor the pathetic pretense that our differences do not exist. And when I think about this quote, like there's something so deep to it with me that again, that indigenous Filipino value of kapo, we need each other. It's not even just about recognizing ourselves in the other. It's about recognizing we are one another. We are one another.
Absolutely. And
Um,
we've come for that experience, and like
yes.
as you say that, and it's probably in a very different space, but Brené Brown says something very similar about we often spend a lot of our life trying to fit in, but actually fitting in is about exactly what you're saying. It's about having to like hide or not show parts of ourselves, where actually what we want is belonging. And belonging
Yes.
is when we can bring our whole self, and it's not quite as the same depth as that beautiful quote, but I feel like there's a very sort of similar thread running through that, which is authentic connection and community is where we get to be our true selves, maybe be a little bit messy at times, like maybe there is some conflict, but like you said, we work through it together. We bring those parts of ourselves that we maybe haven't shown, or we haven't been able to show because it hasn't felt safe for us to do it. And in that kind of authentic space of community where you're able to do that and say, do you know what, I feel blah, 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 or I have this going on that is maybe not something you would necessarily admit in a space where you don't feel that authentic connection. And then your friends, your community, they help you work through it. And maybe there's other people who have similar experiences or similar perspectives to bring, or very different perspectives, and they help you. Just all of that, I just think is such a beautiful dance of like the energies that we've come here to explore and expand with. And that kind of authentic community is just like so deeply powerful, but also like I feel like there's a real, and I don't mean yearning in a kind of like ego sense, I think it's our soul yearns for that kind of authentic connection. And when we find it, we're like
Yes.
I'm home. And part of that's about finding ourselves as well, and being willing to sort of be with ourselves, but being able to do that in a space with other people, like just amazing. And that to me is true liberation. I don't know how
A
you kind of
hundred
view it, but
percent.
like
I mean, I absolutely to everything that you're saying, and you're making me think. So Franny and I first met when I was living in a community house. Me and my husband were living with 5 other roommates, and then COVID hit. So then we were like six of us, was 6 of us, three, yeah, there were 6 of us living in that house together, and we had rooms, we shared this space. And when we weren't quarantined, it was kind of like you went in and out of the house, like we had good conversations. I loved all the people who lived there. But when COVID hit and we were all forced to be at home with one another in those tight quarters 100% of the time, all hours of the day, I really felt this sense of community that you're talking about, where I could bring my whole self. And actually, it's funny that this conversation headed this way, because this morning I dropped off my daughter at my mom's house, and I was driving back, and I got really teary-eyed thinking about the people that I used to live with, because they are people who really embraced my weird and like encouraged my weird. So I've definitely had people in my life who I might have said in the past something like, I'm going to go take this breathwork training, and people would be like, why? And I'd be like, I don't know, it's just like it's just what I feel like doing right now.
Absolutely.
And people rolling their eyes a little weird and be like, okay, Carol's being a little weird. Like, but when I first announced that to the people that I was living with, they were like, tell us how it is. like go for it.
Go for it. Come back.
Right?
Tell us what you found. Let us practice on us, maybe, or like just yeah.
And the power of that, the power of people in our lives who are like, when we want to do something, when we want to share something, when we want to create something, the immense power of people in our lives who go, yeah, like
totally.
do that.
The cheerleaders, the people on the sidelines who are like, yeah, you go show that weird, you go do like, I mean, I have similar spaces where I'm like, God, I get to talk about stuff that there's places I wouldn't share that, but like I get to bring my weirdness, I get to bring this whole beautiful, this whole beautiful side of me that thinks I might talk to dead people sometimes, or like, you know, like whatever it might be. There's sort of that when we have people around us who just go, yeah, brilliant, tell me more. And then tell you about what they reveal a bit of their kind of like, well, you know what? I'm really into this, or I'd love to try that. What do you think? And then you're like, oh my God, that's so like, and when you feed off each other, and like those great kind of groups, or those kind of communities where people are like, have these discussions and like, well, I found out about this, or I've read this, or I've kind of been doing this, and like just all of you are just kind of amplifying each other and growing, and just it's just such a beautiful way of like supporting ourselves and feeling supported in our community, isn't it? That I think I feel like everyone yearns for that. We're not everyone's looking for it in the right places or in the right way, but I think that's what, as humans or spiritual beings having human experiences, is what we are wanting to do, is to find that authentic connection.
I love that you like brought up the word yearning too. And this is going to be a weird connection, but we brought my daughter to see her first movie over the weekend. We went and watched the new Little Mermaid, and she's like singing Part of Your World like toward the beginning of the movie, and I just wept. I just was like, oh my God, she just wants to be human so bad. Like she just wants to dance where the people are. Like she just wants to like learn about the human things. And when you say we're spiritual beings longing for that human experience, like I think about the amount of yearning and longing in that song. And sometimes we forget how much we longed to be here. We forget how desperately we wanted to dance like the people dance, like how desperately we wanted to taste the food. And so yes, we like get into conflict and all of these things happen in our lives, but we also wanted that. We wanted that so that we could experience the magic of having it and of going through it and transforming through it and growing through it. So I think about crying watching The Little Mermaid and her going like, I just want to be where the people are, and going like, God, that's everything that we wanted too as spiritual beings, like asking to be human again. And when I think about what I imagine that realm to be, a place of no conflict, of like totally like, again, that utopian place where everything is perfect. And when we're in the place of everything is perfect, we are looking for something. Sometimes we go looking for
see what else is out there. And I get this message so many times. I love how you said that. I love that. I could really feel that yearning as you were saying it, and that connection, that soul part that you said was how before we chose to inhabit these human bodies, that we yearned for this, that this was like what we wanted for our growth and expansion, and this is what we chose. But it's like just such a powerful experience to come here, and yet we also chose to forget. which are like, oh,
Yeah.
we chose that as part of it. So when we remember again, we're like, oh yes, but we chose to forget as well. And it's just that growth and expansion. This is where I was going to go. Sorry, I forgot my point at the moment. It's not just for us in our human bodies. It's for all beings. It's for like non-physical. It's for physical. Like when we grow in this kind of human condition, when we have growth and expansion, it's not just for us. It's for all, you know, all of the energies that are around us, for source, for everyone, and they get so much from us and like that growth that we get. So it's not just for us, it's for everyone that we're getting this growth and expansion. And I think that then is such an interesting way of coming back to where we started, which is that social justice thing, which is like, we can create that world.
We can.
But I just going to give you one. I'd like to give you one, because I'm going to bring it to an end in a second, but like your kind of parting comments or your parting sort of summary, what would you like to say?
Yeah, it's like to weave together a lot of what we talked about. I end every breathwork session that I facilitate nowadays with the line, "Thank you for breathing and healing with me, for your healing is our healing." I end every breathwork session I facilitate nowadays with that line, because it goes to what you're saying right now about, like, it's not just for me as an individual, it is for us as a collective. And yes, it's for like everyone in the spirit realm, for all of our ancestors, like, and but healing goes both ways, right? We go backwards and we go forward. So it's not just for everyone who has existed, it's for everyone who will exist too. Like, I will continue to heal as much as I possibly can heal. Will I heal all the way and in a way, such a way that Kata won't have anything to deal with in her life? Probably not. Like, but I'm gonna do everything in my power to move myself along my journey, so that she's starting from a different place than I did, the same way I have started from a different place than my own parents. So I think my closing thought really is that, like, to remember that your healing is our healing, that when we do stuff for ourselves, when we work on our own spiritual wellness, when we work on figuring out our own places of belonging, the places that we can be our weirdest and most unique and most authentic versions of ourselves, the places that we can create for others to do the same, all of that work of healing is not just individual work, but collective work. And the more of us who can do that, the more of us who can embody our most authentic selves and encourage the people around us to do the same. It's not just about visualizing that new liberated world. It's about living there now and doing everything in our power to live there now in the ways that we can, moment to moment, day to day, interaction to interaction, to be people who go, I am you and you are me, and how can we be the best and most authentic versions of ourselves, and how can we grow forward together?
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I'm totally running up. Thank you so much. I genuinely have so much love for you and all that you
I
are
love you
and
so
all that
much.
you do. And thank you so much for this. This has been such a beautiful experience for me. And I just wish you well. And as you say, everyone's healing is everyone's healing. So your healing is my healing is your healing.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you. And keep in touch, anyone listening to this. We live in Eden on Instagram. I facilitate breathwork every Saturday with Revelation Breathwork. And yeah, just hit me up. I'd love to continue any of these
Absolutely.
conversations.
I would highly recommend Caroline. Just incredible, authentic person. Thank you.
Thank you.